Hello everyone and good afternoon. You're now with me for TVS News at 5. Budget 2021 tabled by Finance Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz on Friday was distributed justly to the people. Chief Minister Datuk Petinggi Abang Johari Tun Openg said the budget, a part of giving many incentives to the affected by the COVID-19, has also allocated 41 million ringgit for Native Customary Rights NCR program in Sabah and Sarawak.
Juga mengucap terima kasih kerana ada peruntukan diberi kepada negeri Sarawak, iaitu peruntukan infrastruktur yang berjumlah 4.5 bilion dan juga telah memberi balik peruntukan untuk NCR, penyukatan NCR.
He said this at the 32nd Kenyalang Journalism Award 2020 on Friday. Abang Johari also expressed his satisfaction towards the allocated provisions, especially in helping the state regain its momentum amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
Ia berpuas hati. Setidak-tidaknya ia dapat membantu kita dalam kita menghadapi cabaran yang agak sukar disebabkan oleh penularan COVID-19. Selain pada itu, kerajaan juga seperti mana saya katakan tadi telah membantu kita dalam pembangunan yang sedang berjalan, termasuk infrastruktur 4.5 bilion. Okey.
The Sarawak government appreciates the long-standing support and cordial relationship with the media partners in contributing to the state's transformation. Chief Minister Datuk Petinggi Abang Johari Tun Openg expressed his gratitude for the media's continuous and unwavering support, working tirelessly, serving as frontliners since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The journalists must also give a fair view on what we have done, and that should be the way we interact between the journalists as well as the government. But for Sarawak, we have been doing quite well. We treat journalists as our partner in terms of transforming our country, our society, as well as the direction of our development. It has to go together. For that, Sarawak has benefited from that collaboration amongst us.
He said this in a speech at the 32nd edition of the Kenyalang Journalism Awards, which acknowledges the journalism industry in Sarawak, held at a renowned hotel in Kuching on Friday. This year's edition saw the highest submissions at 540 since its inception, as compared to 320 submissions in 2019.
Customer capacity of eateries are now limited to half in the Kuching district red zone. The restriction imposed on eateries by the local government and housing ministry on stricter SOPs aims to curb the vast spread of the COVID-19. According to a statement released by the State Disaster Management Committee on Friday, enforcement teams will conduct monitoring on these premises. Stern action will be taken if any parties fail to adhere to the SOPs. Meanwhile, stay tuned with us. We'll be back after the commercial break. Welcome back. The federal government has unveiled an expansionary budget aimed at spurring domestic activity as it grapples with the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government boosted spending in the 2021 budget by 2.5% to 322.5 billion ringgit, the largest on record, even as the fiscal deficit is expected to hit 6% this year, its highest since the 2009 global financial crisis.
According to Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin in his foreword for the government's 2021 Fiscal Outlook report, the government believes that the current fiscal policy response is the right course of action. He added that there has been an urgent need to ensure that substantial stimulus measures and the economic recovery plan are implemented expeditiously. During the tabling of Budget 2021 on Friday evening, Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Zafrul Abdul Aziz said the total spending increase includes a 4.3% rise in the operating budget, which is the cost of running the government, to 236.5 billion ringgit, while development spending on items such as infrastructure will jump 38% to 69 billion ringgit in 2021. 17 billion ringgit is reserved to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, while another 2 billion ringgit has been allocated for contingency savings. The budget includes cash handouts for poor families and frontline workers in the coronavirus crisis, wage subsidies and funds to create new jobs and train workers. Various incentives and subsidies are also provided for farmers, fishermen and industries to boost productivity and woo investors. Meanwhile, revenue is projected to rise 4.2% to 236.9 billion ringgit next year, including an estimated 18 billion ringgit in dividends from Petronas. Monetary policy will continue to provide support to the economic recovery next year, flagging the resurgence of COVID-19 cases, geopolitical tensions and weak commodity prices as downside risks.
As a mark of appreciation for their services, some 100,000 health ministry frontliners will benefit from the 500 ringgit one-off payment announced by the government. Finance Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz said the grant was in addition to the monthly 600 ringgit COVID-19 special allowance given since March and will continue until the pandemic threat is successfully overcome.
Sebagai tambahan, kerajaan bersetuju untuk melaksanakan pemberian one-off sebanyak RM500 bagi menghargai jasa anggota barisan hadapan KKM yang dijangka memanfaatkan 100,000 petugas kesihatan.
The government appreciates the sacrifices and hard work of the frontliners in handling the COVID-19 pandemic. To assist frontliners who face difficulty obtaining childcare services, he said 30 million ringgit has been allocated to provide nurseries in government premises, especially in hospitals. As for the private sector, matching grants of up to 20 million ringgit will be provided to encourage the private sector to provide childcare centres in their premises. Meanwhile, Tengku Zafrul said the government will also provide 24 million ringgit for contributions under the Employment Injury Scheme under the Social Security Organisation (SOCSO) for the benefit of workers in 4 groups. He said the first group involved members of the armed forces, police reserve volunteers, civil defence volunteers and maritime volunteers. He said the second covers takmir teachers, Imam Bilal, Sia, Noja and Merbud, while the third will involve public sector workers with contract for service status. As for the fourth group, he said to appreciate their contributions as part of the support group during the movement control order period, this same initiative will also be extended to some 40,000 delivery riders.
Civil servants grade 56 and below will receive a special financial one-off assistance worth 600 ringgit as announced by the government. Finance Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Abdul Aziz, when presenting Budget 2021 in Parliament today, said retired civil servants and non-pensionable veterans, meanwhile, will also be entitled to a 300 ringgit one-off special assistance payment. The aid will be disbursed early next year. Since being appointed as a minister almost 8 months ago and coming from the corporate sector, Tengku Zafrul said he is now aware how committed and steadfast the civil servants are in carrying out the trust given. Working tirelessly, they serve beyond expectations and rise beyond the call of duty to safeguard the people, support businesses and strengthen the economy. The federal government is committed at obtaining a COVID-19 vaccine through participation in the COVID-19 vaccine Global Access or COVAX. According to Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul, the commitment will cost over 3 billion ringgit to Qatar for all Malaysians.
Meanwhile, the government has also agreed to expand the scope of tax exemption for medical expenses to encourage the public to get vaccinated.
Bagi menggalakkan rakyat mendapatkan vaksinasi mencegah penularan penyakit, kerajaan bersetuju untuk meluaskan skop pelepasan cukai bagi perbelanjaan rawatan perubatan meliputi perbelanjaan vaksinasi seperti pneumokokal, influenza serta COVID-19. Pelepasan cukai ini diberi ke atas perbelanjaan vaksinasi bagi diri sendiri, pasangan dan anak-anak terhad kepada RM1,000.
Meanwhile, Tengku Zafrul said the government will also increase the limit of tax exemptions for medical expenses to treat serious diseases for the self, spouses and children from 6,000 ringgit to 8,000 ringgit. Tengku Zafrul also announced that the government has allocated 1 billion ringgit to curb the third wave of COVID-19 next year. He said the allocation would include 475 million ringgit for the purchase of reagents, screening kits and consumables specifically for the use of the Ministry of Health. The allocation also includes 318 million ringgit for the provision of personal protection equipment, PPE, and hand sanitizer to MOH frontline personnel and 150 million ringgit to the National Disaster Management Agency to coordinate efforts to combat COVID-19. Besides, 50 million ringgit will be allocated for the procurement of equipment, laboratory test supplies and medicines at the University Teaching Hospital. He said the allocation also included for the purpose of adding dental facility, operating equipment, virtual services as well as the provision of screening zone facilities and thermometers at health facilities to meet the standard operating procedures under the new norms.
Well, that's all from me. I would like to take this chance to send my gratitude and appreciation to the MOH frontliners. Thank you for your sacrifice and tireless time to reduce this pandemic. And remember tonight at Nightline, 11:30 p.m. with Shira Abang Mansor and Razi Ahmad for more updates. Stay tuned. Ruben Gomez, anytime, anywhere.